I'm Matt Braunger. This might help.
I am not a doctor.
This might help.
I'm not a professional.
Let's have fun. This honestly is a good time.
Honestly, I got no idea what I'm doing. What's going on? Who are you?
I'm Matt Braunger. This might help. The podcast. Hey, welcome to This Might Help with Matt Braunger, the advice podcast that's based on fun. If you have a clinical problem, you need to talk to a professional. I ain't the one. Neither are my guests. But we might help. Who knows? Appreciate you listening, all the likes and the subscribes and all that jazz. And for people calling in, I know it's not easy to call and leave your messages up. Is that somebody's phone? But if you do call in, I really love you and I appreciate you. Thanks, guys, so much. Today, I have a guest who I don't know well, but we've worked together, and I know he's super funny. And put it this way, still waters run deep. Josh Johnson, everybody.
Hey, how's it going?
Thanks for coming on. How are you?
Doing well. Thanks for having me, man.
Oh, you bet. You bet. Yeah, you're a cool dude, man. You have a kind of quiet reserve about you on stage that I really enjoy.
Oh, thanks. It's panic.
I think maybe I show mine more than you. I think I definitely flail and I get loud and stuff, and I'm a little more expressive of that id, you know. But yeah, were you? Do you think of yourself as someone with a lot of anxiety? Do you feel like you are?
Yeah, and I think that it depends on both the joke and the general topic, because sometimes it's like if you have a resting state of calm, then whenever it's almost like swearing. Like it's like if you almost never do it and then you finally do it, it's not just funnier, it like is more pointed because you're like, wow, he's really worked up. He's never like this. So, you know, I try to have that sort of ebb and flow of like always come back down and go back up sometimes and then come back down. And then I think that for the most part, I think maybe you might be the fourth person to think that I'm cool. So that means a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I just think you keep your cards close to your chest, which is like a way to it even if you're unintentionally doing it, you're coming off as cool and not in a forced way. Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh, thank goodness.
Yeah. You know, you seem comfortable with yourself. That's kind of all I mean. It's like I was thinking about it today, where I just drove 3 hours from Bend, Oregon to Medford, Oregon. I'm doing a show here tonight, and I just had like one of those, you know, stitch it on a pillow thoughts where I was like, I'd rather be happy than cool, like so much more. Yeah. Giving up on being cool. I think I had like a Trans Am big wheel when I was a kid with like a Firebird on it, and I think that's when I peaked. I think that was like the epitome of my cool. Like I was never.
Yeah. That is a Trans Am big wheel is like what a what a dope way to describe what being a cool kid was like, because I forgot that was like ballin' back in the day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I feel like it was. I had that peak until a kid showed up with like a green machine, which like a green machine was like at the time was like a big wheel 2.0, like the new. It was bigger, it was faster. You know, you could spin out easier, stuff like that. Like I don't know, like it wasn't even called a big wheel anymore. It was like, oh, I don't have a big wheel. I have a green machine. Like, oh,
yeah,
like the Tesla of that.
Yeah, exactly. Like a green machine was like, it's such a that it really hurts when language changes, because that's when you know you're behind. So like if you're like, especially let's say you grew up without any money, so you didn't have any money when you were a kid, and it's like the fact that you use different words is like, guys. So when I was little, we couldn't always afford goldfish, like the snack goldfish.
Sure, crackers, right?
So I would eat dolphins, and other kids were like, what are you talking about? But dolphins were the dollar store goldfish.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I didn't even know what you meant.
Yeah, but nobody did. So then I was like, oh, that's how you know that you don't have it. Like that, like
yeah.
Not only not cool, you're not even regular. Like
Yeah. I remember a kid having like, you know, there are always those knockoff sneakers at like, you know, Nike with like, you know, 2Ks or something, and like this kid had like, it was Adidas, but they had like an extra stripe, like a fourth stripe, And this kid, like that I went to school with, was like looked at me. He was like, "What are those, man? Abibas?" And like that was like everyone was just like clowning him. And it's that thing where it's like, God, we were so harsh, making
Yeah.
fun of a kid that's poor. Like, come on, man.
Yeah, and also it's like because when you're a kid, there's no first of all, there's almost no hierarchy that you don't create because you're all
Right.
kids. So you all can't drive, you all aren't cool, you all
Right.
don't have any money or things. So even if your parents have money, you don't have money. You're
Yeah.
in the fourth grade. But then if you amongst your little ecosystem can create a hierarchy, then you pull your feelings from that, you know?
Yes. Yeah, its status is enormous, and
Yeah.
because you're such an an emotional sponge that to be ostracized is like the worst thing ever. Where you'll even ostracize someone else so that you don't get ostracized.
Yeah.
It's pretty animal kingdom when you're a kid, and I mean I have a 1-year-old daughter, and we put her to daycare, and I was like, God, I hope everyone gets along with her. So like now like I'll drop her off and the kids will be like, "Hi, Rose," and it's like, oh, I'm like happy like the rest of the day. I'm like, okay,
Yeah. And you can also always it's never too young to teach them how to fist fight because I feel like that also really helps the social hierarchy of like,
sure.
wait, what did you say? What did you say? Yeah, I
Yeah, yeah,
mean,
yeah,
oh,
yeah. Even like because the fights, like fights as a grown man are horrifying because it's like when do they end? What until one guy kills the other guy. It's like this guy's
yeah,
not going to stop getting up, and like you can actually hurt someone with adult bodies. Little
yeah,
kid bodies, they punch a couple times and they cry and they fall down and then they're friends again. And it's like, okay. And I'm not pro violence at all, but it's like,
yeah.
the amount of, I mean, I mean, I will tell Rose as soon as she understands, like if someone gets in your face and mess with you, just give them a shot. You know what I mean? Just like,
Yeah,
if you're
yeah.
going to hit someone, you be the first. You punch them right in the mouth.
Yeah, you really just got to teach her the right stance because it's all in the legs, you
Get
know.
all the legs.
And so then,
Yeah.
if she just knows how to follow through, she'll be like the little Tyson of her first grade class. Because kids don't have because they don't have the motor skills, they don't have the follow through.
No,
So the
yeah.
kids when they swing, the closest thing. You remember Dark Knight Rises, right?
Of course, yeah.
Okay, you know what hurt my feelings so much about Bane beating up Batman in Dark Knight Rises
Sure.
is that he beat him up like a little kid.
Yeah.
So they fought like little kids. So like Batman was trying to come through with form, with like nice like round punches and everything.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
Bay was just pure strength. He would just
Yep.
pick him up, shake him, throw him down,
Just
and
thump
then
them. Yeah.
and then he'd like let him hit him and then punch him a
Yeah.
real good one. It's just it was like watching two 8-year-olds with bigger bodies.
Yeah. And the one 8-year-old, his one of his parents is a boxer, so just taught
Yeah.
him. And he like lifts like milk jugs at home, like he can't really lift weights yet, but he has more muscular definition than a kid should have, So
Yeah. It's oof. Nothing
Bane
terrifies
does
me
look like a
more.
ripped toddler. Like
He
he does.
does. Because the thing is, first of all, we have to start acknowledging and talking about little kids with big necks because
Yeah.
that's like a football player in the making.
Mm-hmm.
And like only football coaches ever seem to talk about it, but there's just kids who have like naturally thick necks where I'm like, guys, that we should teach him now.
Yeah, to be
Like all the
kind.
all the
Yeah.
morals and stuff because he's gonna be too strong by
Yes.
accident. He's not
Yeah.
gonna be he's not even gonna mean to, but he's gonna be flipping tables by accident.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I got really tall very young, and like I couldn't control my leverage. Sometimes I would jokingly push someone, and they'd go pinwheeling into the street, and like
Yeah.
it was like, oh no, and you feel like Frankenstein, but it's you have to learn your body. I mean, I was reading a whole article about like I started doing comedy with Kumail, and like now that he's so ripped, like he's he had to psychologically adjust to his body that he had to build for that role that he in the movie and the other roles he's doing and stuff. So it's fascinating how your physicality can change. Like I mean, I used to weigh 40 pounds more than I do now, and my mobility is so much better than it was when I was 10 years younger, which is wild. You've always
Yeah.
been a pretty slim person, yeah.
Yeah. I've always had the build. The only change is that before the and there's almost no proof, so I guess believe me if you want to believe me. But before the pandemic, I was actually like a good 15 pounds of muscle more than I am now. So I was still slim, like you could even call me skinny, but I had like a real physique finally. And
Shit.
then the pandemic hit, and like a little bit of depression and a little bit of not having a proper gym. It's like you can only do push-ups and like squats so much to
Right.
maintain,
Yeah.
but I've lost a significant amount of muscle and weight. So I've always been the size that I am at this moment.
Mhm. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's and I think that's really common. I did a benefit show for these two guys. They're both veterans, and one guy was in Afghanistan and saw a lot of action. And he came back and he gained a lot of weight. And we went out for a beer after the show, and he was like, "Yeah, I really feel." He was knocking himself for gaining all this weight. He's like, "I just without." The training I used to have every week and when I was in the service, it's like I just kind of fell by the wayside. And I was like, dude, that's okay. I mean, you got to take care of yourself and you should work out for your health, but it's beating up on yourself is not going to help anything. You going, oh, I
Yeah.
hate myself and I'm so stupid or whatever, not that you're doing that, but it's like, I
Yeah.
think everybody had a mental breakdown on some level during the pandemic. Absolutely.
And it's also, I found, I can only speak for myself, but I found that for me, it's beating up on yourself is also a sidestepping tactic to still not do the thing. Because while you're beating up on yourself, you kind of feel better about acknowledging how bad you're being, but
Yeah.
you're still not doing the thing.
Right.
So
Yeah.
so if I'm like, oh man, I should really work on my project. And then I'm like, man, I spent the whole day not working on I'm still not working on like I'm still
Totally.
doing the same thing. But
Yeah.
now I'm making myself feel better because I'm like, man, at least I know what a piece of trash I am.
Yeah. Yeah. At least I'm honest with myself here.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Are you how is your like work schedule doing? Like do you get things done during the day? Because I for me it comes and goes.
Yeah, you know what it is that the entirety of the time that I've been doing comedy, and maybe one day it'll change, but I don't know if it will, is that I have found that, I work a daily show, and so I get
Mhm.
all that stuff done during the day, and then I go out and do shows at night. So there's like this like 2-3 hour period of like almost downtime to a certain degree
Yeah.
where I'm not at a show and I'm not at the show,
Mhm.
and in that time sometimes I write and stuff, but I find that my writing and getting stuff done in a sense is it ebbs and flows with inspiration. So it's like I obviously know how to write jokes, so I could just sit and write jokes for 20-30 minutes every day. I don't
Mhm.
know if I would like them or keep them because the things that I really chew on and overwrite almost are ideas that I had that I think I'm really interested in.
Mhm.
Like even today, I had a conversation with a good friend of mine, and he's got 2 kids, and
Yeah.
so I asked him because we hadn't talked on the phone in like a month, and so I asked him like, how's everything been with the kids? And he was telling me everything that he was doing, and he's like a really good dad, like just like a good dude that's also a good dad. Sometimes it's like sometimes we treat them as if they have to be linked, and they're not necessarily linked. Like
No, yeah.
they're good people that are, and
Mhm.
so he's a good dude and a good dad. And I was like, man, you know what is crazy is that we think that a good dad is someone that's like present and just like there and supportive all the time. And I think that there's actually a different type of good dad that we call him a deadbeat, but what if he knows he's like, guys, I'm trash. If I'm in this kid's life, I'm gonna ruin him. So let me go ahead and peace out now. Like let me step out now so that
Yeah.
they because guys, listen, I have a kid, but I'm also an alcoholic. So
Yeah.
maybe I shouldn't be that. So it's like you
Sure.
see all these celebrities with like deadbeat dads, and it's like maybe that's exactly what you needed though. Like maybe
Yeah.
that's a really good dad.
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, they're kind of to your point of the person that calls themselves a piece of crap for not doing the thing, but it's like at least I'm calling myself a piece of crap. That person is also like, yeah, I'm a piece of. I shouldn't be in this kid's life. Like,
Yeah, and it's like, but and to me at least, that seems like an aspect of being a good dad that we never give credit to because we're like,
Mhm.
no, you should just stop being you and then be here. And it's like, well, that's a different guy. I'm not
Oh
gonna
yeah,
lie. That's a
yeah.
totally
I mean,
that's like pointing to every guy and being like, you should just man up, take some TRT, and join the military. It's like, well, that's not most guys. You know
that's
what I mean?
it is not one size fits all. This is not
Yeah,
what
yeah.
you love is not what this person loves, and vice versa. Absolutely. Before I became a dad, I was absolutely terrified because it's like talk about a new you don't have anything to base on. It's like I did babysitting when I was in junior high, but that's about it. I watched friends' kids, but like it was just this kind of trial by fire. I mean, I love it. I think I'm pretty good at it. It's kind of all I think about in terms of how I
Yeah,
make
yeah.
decisions and stuff. So it's like, so there's that. But I'm also so selfish that I can't imagine not being in her life. Like I couldn't.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
the other thing. It's like because I do get so much joy from it, and it hasn't affected my life in anything but a positive manner. I mean, it's more stressful, and you're always kind of sad in a way because this kid is constantly changing. You're like, what happened to that kid last week? I missed that kid. Who's this kid?
Yeah.
People are always growing and changing, but it's like I couldn't imagine when I hear about dads who just he pieced out, or he would just be gone all weekend. It's like, what? I mean, I am gone all weekend. I shouldn't say that, doing comedy, but my wife is there. And anyway, like
Yeah.
how was your family situation growing up? Was it
You
decent
know,
or?
yeah, it was good. My parents got divorced when I was pretty young.
Okay.
I can't remember if I was 11 or 13. I think I was 11.
Wow.
And so I'm like still fairly young and everything.
Mhm.
But I think that growing up with like my mom, my aunt, my grandma, and my granddad was great because I think I got so many different angles
Mm.
of like experiences because there were points growing up where we were all in the same house. So it wasn't as if I like just see my grandparents. It's like no, I also live with my mom and my grandparents, because like
Wow.
at a young age my mom had to have brain surgery and we weren't sure if she would live, and so it's like I was already living with like we basically moved in with my grandparents during the divorce, and obviously we had to stay with them because my mom couldn't work for a little while because she was like still healing and still like going to the doctor. They were checking up on her, everything like that. And so it was good, and I think that I also just didn't grow up with I didn't have any like truly homogenous experiences growing up, so it's like lived in this predominantly black neighborhood, but then I went to like a Montessori school, and then I still lived in like predominantly black neighborhood, but then I went to a Catholic school, and so it was like I had a very like everybody hates Chris growing up
Ah.
situation. Except my parents were divorced, and so I think that that helps me a lot in how I see people and how I see situations, because it's like even though I am like more liberal minded and everything, I actually do get where a lot of conservatism comes from because I grew up around it. And, so we went to this like evangelist church as well on Sundays. And so it's like I got all these angles of what like especially southern white people were thinking, but then also I'm black, like being like fully immersed in my like overall black experience, and then seeing all these different angles of what whiteness is like, because then I was also getting a Protestant versus Catholic like outlook, because when I
Interesting.
went to school I had to you at Catholic school you take religion class, so it's like in order to pass the test I have to memorize these things that these people believe,
Yeah.
and in order to be accepted on Sunday I have to like memorize these things that these people believe, and then all the while I have to like look around at the world as well. So
Hmm.
I think that all those different cross sections really help me, and help even now they sort of help my writing because I try to not forget them. And there's like it's very easy to just roll in and say the things that the people like you will like, but I
Yeah.
think that so often people like even when you look at I'm they they have these like Pandora papers or
Yeah.
coming out and everything, and
Sure.
everybody's talking about the tax situation, and it's like, look, I think obviously people should be paying their fair share. The one thing I will say about taxes though is like I remember when I got hired at Tonight Show, and so up until then you have to remember poor, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So then oh wait, sorry. I go to Tonight Show and I'm making money for the first time in my life. I'm like making money.
Yeah.
And then they send me my tax bill and I'm like, "Yo, guys, I just got here. Can you give me a day?" Like
Yeah.
having to pay taxes your first year of not being poor is a
Yeah.
lot like if you've never been to a party in your life. Let's say you've never ever been to a party
Mm-hmm.
and then you get invited to your first party. And then as soon as you get to the door and ring the doorbell, somebody opens the door and they're like, "Hey, can you go on the beer run?" It's like, I haven't even been inside yet. Like this is wild, you know? And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I understand where some people are coming from on a smaller scale. Like when we're
Mm-hmm.
talking about that like lower middle class, I'm like, yeah, you like even though you all sound like whatever the Republican narrative around taxes is, I get it because I at least for a year of my life was there where I was
Oh
like,
yeah.
wow, I don't even get a break of I don't even know if I'm not going to be poor next year.
No, yeah, it's so touch and go what we do, and we always feel like
Yeah.
it's going to be taken. It's going to, because we did kind of get the brass ring. We're doing what we love for money, and whether you're doing really well or you're just getting by, that's making it really. And I mean, to your point, I feel like most people are at heart Republican in some sense because it's very self-centered and it's all about I don't want to pay taxes, whatever I earn, I want to keep. The thing I blanch at is like, of course, the guy with like 10 houses and he's never paid taxes, and like, there's public schools are dying. But like, I remember I saw, like Sam J, who basically has the mentality of a rapper, who's like, an old friend, and she had this bitch. She was at the city winery a couple of months ago and was like, a girl came up to her and was like, "We have to tax the rich by 50%." And she's like, quote, "I spit on that bitch's shoes." She's like, as she put it, "I'm trying to buy a boat." And it's like, it's just, it is that thing of, like I'm with you. Like I totally relate. It's like I don't align myself with that because I think we live in a society where we have to try to help each other. But man, when you look at your check, especially in California, how much money they take, you're like,
Yeah. Or you're also like, wow, wait, why do I only have to help? Like,
right, yeah.
like, cause they're not helping and it's legal. Like
Mhm.
it's
Totally.
legal for them to not help. So then it's like as long as they're not helping, let's burn this whole thing down. I don't want to help either.
Absolutely.
And I
Yeah.
think but I think that mentality as well is what leads to like a mass attitude toward like that attitude only helps the people who like already aren't.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Instead of all of us unifying and being like, do something about this,
Hmm.
we're all like, well, then I don't want to pay either. Because the
Course.
self interesting thing is to, nah, guys, I'm not gonna pay either. And
Yeah.
so I think that those things growing up, like all of those different facets of experiences that I was exposed to have really helped me, at least in how I approach comedy and how I approach people approaching me, if that makes sense. Because I
Yeah.
also like in comedy, you have to be. I find that like I had a conversation with some comics at the Cellar as well that when I'm interested in what you think about this, where they're like, if you think about it, no one that's very good at comedy, so I'm talking about like really good, like you look up to them, none of them are dumb. Like
Right.
it's like you cannot be amazing at comedy and be dumb because
No.
you have to there's so much that has to be going on in your brain for you to be good at comedy.
Yes.
And I think that one of the things that you need is like a deep almost painful self-awareness because
Yeah.
knowing how you come off to people teaches you how you can communicate with people, you know?
Yeah.
So the
Exactly.
same thing you were talking about earlier, where you were like, as a tall guy, I have to understand my leverage. It's like,
Mhm.
as a comedian, you have to understand your leverage. Like maybe you
Yeah.
do this joke and you think it's just a little push, and then people are like, ah, like
It's so true. You'll just throw a line out and it'll just light fire to the room, and you're like, "What?
yeah,
That was just a thought I did." Okay, right. Keep that one.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I do kind of bristle at people like, Bill Burr and Kyle Kinane who call themselves idiots on stage. What do I know? I'm an idiot, but I just think. And it's like, but you're not. Neither one of both those guys are incredibly intelligent, Like
yeah,
Kyle
yeah.
plays the dumb guy, but even, I mean, back when we started out, he would look at stuff from an angle I'd never thought of. He'd be like, oh, wait, isn't that? And I'd be like, oh my God, yeah. I feel like you do a lot of that, where you kind of go out and go, look, I know we agree that this is this is this is this, but isn't it also, I see you do a lot of that, which is cool.
Sure. Yeah. Well, the other thing, and it's a thing that I look at when you mentioned Burr and Kinane, so I'll just use them as examples. The thing that I think is almost painful is that if you as Matt or Bill or Kyle are dealing with a level of thought that, for lack of a better term, let's just say is genius, right? So let's say you have a genius idea.
Right.
The problem with genius and why people so rarely get it in its time is that first, the person that had the idea has to distill it to themselves. So you already have to figure out how exactly you think, feel, and word this thing to communicate all in your own head. Then, as it leaves from your head to your mouth, you have to communicate it in a way that people who are not thinking about the thing that you're thinking will get it. Yeah. And I think that that's what makes comedy so hard sometimes, and what makes good comedy really hard, is because we can all do. There's a level of joke, and I do it too. I'm not coming down on anybody, but there's a level of joke that's just the yuck yucks.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, you're just doing the yuck yucks. You're like, hey, this is funny, and then oh, this thing happened to me, and it's goofy, whatever. Most of us can do the yuck yucks really well. It's only like 3 or 4 times a special almost. So you already have to be like that class of comic to have this amazing hour. There's only 3 or 4 moments in those hours where someone is like, oh my gosh, I've never put it together, or like I didn't see the design,
Yeah, I feel like we've all had that situation where we have something that, for one of another way to put it, we find it so funny in ourselves. And we'll say it's audience, and it's like, I realized, I kind of don't talk about it anymore, but like a couple weeks ago, all these articles came out about dads who didn't help during the pandemic. Like, they're stuck at home, they can't go anywhere. They have free time, and they're just not helping with these kids, and the wives are going crazy, and they're like, can you look, you lost your job or whatever, can you at least help? And that's not my job. They kind of have this thing, and like the whole bit in my head was like, where is he going? Like, is he hiding in the backyard? Is he going like behind like a duvet? What is he? Where is this man? And I realized it wasn't that it was funny, really. There's no joke there. I just found the idea insane, because I have a house. It's not enormous, I mean, but like I couldn't really hide anywhere in that house, and it's kind of like, it would be so. You can pretend you're working at work always. If you're at a job, you can always be like, oh, gotta take these files down the hall or whatever, But like, you can't pretend you're parenting. There's just no way. And the idea was just so absurd to me. But it's like, it would never land. But that's because I just found it enchanting, in its way.
Yeah. Well, it's also just funny too, because I mean, I think there is something very funny about what they were filling their time with, because I found that dads are in a perpetual war with grass. Like every dad I've ever met, like my dad, when I was little, my dad would be like, oh, gotta get that grass out there. Like that, like it's like looking out the window at grass that they have to cut, and some days doing it and most days not doing it, and then doing it and being exhausted.
Yes.
And it's like, I mean, I understand that there are metropolitan areas, but I feel like maybe they just cut the grass extra. I don't know what you could be doing, because it's also a thing where your partner knows that you don't have a job. So then I guess you can try to make a big show out of looking for jobs, but like, I know that you're not. It's like how your coworkers know you're not working, even if you can trick your boss.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Because your boss can be like, well, he's been at the computer all day, he must be doing something. And then your coworkers are like, he playing Galaga.
Yeah. The people who do what you do next to you, they know exactly how little or how much you're doing. Like, no question.
Yeah.
No question. If this person's on your level, it's almost like when you meet someone, and it's a big city and there's lots of rooms, but I'm sure you meet people that are like, oh yeah, no, I'm a New York comic. And you're like, I've never seen you, man. Like ever. I've never seen you at any
Yeah.
mics. Never seen you at any shows. You know, it's like you don't put any time in. You know, you're just
or yeah, you're like, I'm writing a lot now in preparation to begin, so I'm just gonna say I'm a comic now.
yeah.
So it's like,
Yeah.
it's one of those things where every once in a while you meet somebody like that where you think they're gonna just be terrible and bomb for like years, and then they actually are like, oh, maybe this was the right thing for you to do because that was pretty funny. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, some people it just clicks, and I can't hate it. I'm just like, great. Most
yeah.
people it takes at least 5 years to be bearable on
It's
stage.
it's also so wild because based off you saying that, there was a guy, I'm trying to remember like not his name. I'm not gonna throw him out there like that, but like I'm trying to remember the place he said, because basically it was this exact situation you laid out. A comic and I were hanging out, and then he started chopping it up with us at the bar, and finally we asked him, because it seemed like he was trying to, like, you know how sometimes people get bitty with you.
Yes.
Okay, so it seemed like he was doing that. So finally, my friend just asked, like, "Are you a comic?" And he was like, "Yeah." And we're like, "Oh, okay. Like, how are you? Do you live in New York?" Because we were like, "Okay, maybe he just is like a Jersey guy, Philly guy, whatever,
Sure.
comes in."
Yeah.
And he was like, "Oh yeah, I'm here." And we were like, "Oh, okay. So where do you go up or anything?" And he said the name. He said this one place. It's like, yeah, it's like my spot. And then we were like, "Oh, okay, I've never heard of it." And then we Googled it later, and it was like a karaoke bar. And so I was like, "Dang, my man is like," and not, I
Sorry.
can't hate it. Oh, you're fine.
Sorry.
Oh no,
That's
you're okay.
hilarious. That's so funny.
I can't even hate it because when I moved to Chicago to start doing comedy, I would go up everywhere that I could. And for whatever reason, there was this one place called the Holiday Club that had karaoke / comedy, but
Oh
no one ever
wow.
went there to do comedy. So, like, I guess just the DJ of the karaoke night loved comedy. So
Oh,
he would
okay.
let comics get up, but everybody was there for karaoke. And so I remember I went there the first time and actually did really well. Like,
Nice.
the DJ and I were surprised how well I did. I'm like 3 months in. I shouldn't. What business do I have doing well?
Yes.
And every time after that, I bombed so hard. Like,
Yeah.
it was,
Oh, that's so funny. Was that your first time or no?
no, it wasn't my first time,
Okay.
but it was my first time there.
Okay.
And for some reason, the first time there was just magic, and everybody was like into it, and people were laughing. It was great. And
Yeah.
then every time after that, I went there 3 more times before I was like, let me just stop doing this to myself, because
Mhm.
I'm not getting anything out of it. I'm just getting my feelings hurt every time.
Yeah, I mean, I killed the first time I tried stand up. A friend of mine was doing a show, and then the booker was like, "Your friend says you're funny," and I was like, "I've never done comedy." And he's like, "I'll give you some free drinks." I was like, "Okay, I'll try it." And so I like wrote what I thought would be a good bit. I had a ton of friends in the audience, so you know, I did great, and I was like, "Oh man, this is easy." And like, I bombed for like months after that. You know, like
Yeah,
I've been
yeah.
doing improv, but it's just the worst possible thing that can happen to you when you first try it is you kill. It's just like,
Yeah, yeah. It's like I think that as well. It was nice because my first few times doing it were just okay. So it
mhm.
wasn't bad enough to like really be a true sniper shot to my ego, but it didn't go so well that I thought I was good.
Right, right, okay. Well,
You
that's
know what I
good.
mean? So then you're
Mhm.
like, oh, okay, I definitely didn't do as well as that other guy. So
Mhm.
I'm somewhere on the spectrum, which is
Yeah,
nice.
yeah. I did enjoy going up on the bill with people that would just destroy, and I would do okay. And I'm like, okay, I'm
Yeah.
learning. This is cool. Like I didn't embarrass myself there. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, you know what's crazy as well is with bombing, you know, here's the thing. When it is in certain situations, watching someone bomb is like such a wild and beautiful experience because you're seeing them. Sometimes they snap, sometimes, but it's like you never want. I never personally. This is just me. I never want to see someone bomb. Even when
No.
I don't like someone, I don't want to see them. It feels so bad, and I
Oh,
feel for them that
yeah.
I never wish it on somebody. But if it is already happening,
Right.
if we're already in it and something funny comes from it, because I find that like the level of honesty that you get when you're bombing and you acknowledge it is never not funny.
No,
Like
yeah.
to me, that wins people back when
Oh,
you're like,
absolutely. When someone just, when they, I always say, if, it's almost like a tenet of therapy. If you don't feel good, say you don't feel good. If you're sad, say you're sad. If you're eating it on stage, don't be like, ah, you guys are great. What else is, like, oh, just call,
yeah,
just say you're not doing well. It's gonna get a reaction. People are gonna like
yeah.
that, like,
One of the most spectacularly wild bombs I ever saw. I had just moved to New York. I was at an open mic, and for anybody who's like, I don't know all the listenership, but for anybody who is doing comedy, either thinking of moving to New York or you already live in New York and you're about to start doing comedy, this is like a thing. This is not you. This is what will happen. Okay. When you move to New York and you start open micing and stuff, there's a lot of buckets. And the bucket system is to try to make it almost like a raffle so that it's a bit more fair. Because
right.
if it was a list, then like people who know the person, the host of the mic, would just text them before, can you put me on the like it
Yeah.
creates just too much tension. So there's a bucket. Now even the bucket is rigged. Let's not let's not lie to ourselves that if you as Matt came and for whatever reason you were like, I need to do 3 minutes on this one bit, let me just go over to this mic, they would just put you up. Like
Okay.
they do the bucket, but then they'd be like, oh, funny enough,
A
Matt.
special dispensation. Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
Okay, so I go to New York with two of my friends, Amy Shanker and Jeff Sheen. We all three of us moved from Chicago, and we're all. It's like so obvious because every mic that the three of us go to, we're last, and we're like, guys, no one's this unlucky. How are we last every time? There's no way. There's
Yeah.
no way. So then there was a mic that I went to by myself, and I don't even know if they do this mic anymore, but there was a guy that blew my mind. So the bucket only had 15 names in it. So already you're like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna be here for like 45 minutes at most. I can stay and watch everybody. It's not like a 3-day long mic,
Sure.
because some of the ones that are like 4 hours are just too much. You just want to get up and go.
Of course.
So this guy, they say his name, and first of all, he's got shades inside at 9 o'clock at night.
Nice.
And as he's walking up, he like makes a big show of like walking up there. And immediately I'm like, oh no. Because I'm not so new to comedy that I don't know what's about to happen. Like I'm like 3 years in.
Yeah.
And so he starts doing his set, and my man is just like bombing, right? And I'm like, oh man, like yeah, I'm like in my head, I'm like rooting for him, and he's just bombing. And then out of nowhere, he just grabs the mic a little tighter, and he goes, "Ah!" like starts screaming. And so then it perks up everybody at the bar. So even the people who weren't paying attention are looking now. And he's like, I'm so sick of this. All right. People tell me I'm funny at work, and then I come here and nobody laughs, and I just want to get paid to do the thing that I like. This is great. And then he also goes and goes like screw this. This is crazy. And then he puts the mic back in the stand, and we're all just like wide-eyed. And he goes to step away, and at the last second, he grabs the mic and he's like, "Hey, you ever notice how?" And like tries to do another joke.
No.
Tries to do another joke, and then it bombs because now we're so like taken aback. We're so shell shocked from him
Yeah.
screaming
Kind
that
of
like
afraid.
we don't even notice the joke. So then he's like, ah, ah. And then he like puts the mic back in the mic. So he's like, screw everybody here. This is crazy. I can't believe I'm doing this with my life. And then he takes like maybe 3 steps. So then the host actually stands up and starts walking to the stage, like, I guess I'm gonna just keep the mic going. And then he runs back one last time and he's like, y'all ever remember when? And then tries to do this joke
No.
that does it's the worst joke he's told. It didn't even seem to have an ending, and and then he puts the mic back in the mic stand and lets out like such a deep bellowing scream. He's just like and then he like walks off the stage, walks out the door, and I was so sure he was coming back with a gun. I've never been more sure somebody was coming back to shoot up a place than that guy, and he didn't.
Yeah.
He didn't come back.
Man.
But it was like, even that, I was like, well, you had our attention.
Yeah, we won't forget you. Like I think we mentally scrub when we see someone bomb. Your brain just kind of you always remember, oh, that person killed that. Remember that joke? I have that joke's in my head now. It's a good joke. When someone eats it, it kind of goes away. Unless you really try to remember, like, who have I seen bomb last? You really got to find that memory. People are going to remember him because he screamed. Like, he couldn't get a laugh, so he traumatized the audience. Like, and they thought when he left, he was going to drive his car like through the front of the restaurant. You know what I mean? Like it's like, okay, this is emotional hostage taking, dude. Like, this is not.
And it was also, the wildest thing about it is, at the mic you only get 3 minutes, so it's like that means it didn't take long for him to snap. Like, at least in Chicago,
He didn't get the light yet and started screaming.
Yeah, like Chicago, you get 5 minutes. Sometimes you get, whatever. But like New York, there's just so many comics. You only get 2 to 3, and so then my man, he probably in his first minute and a half and just
Oh, it's amazing. Dude, thank you for that story. Okay, on that, okay, let's get to the calls. Let me ask you, do you get asked advice? I always ask everybody on the show.
Yeah.
Okay. It's not surprising to me at all. It's funny, my favorite answer to that question was Aparna and Chairless said, like, yes, but I think because they know I won't be a jerk. Like, they know I'm going to say something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You liked it, right? Come on, Aparna. Yes, yeah. Because she's such a sweetheart. But I could see you getting asked advice though, because you're definitely, from you can tell from your act, you're a thinker. Like, I feel like you consider things. So
maybe, yeah. I mean, I think also sometimes, especially when I'm on the train in New York, I just have a face that says, "You want to talk?"
Right. That's gotta be tough.
Yeah, and then people, oof.
I'm sure. Well, luckily we won't see any of these people. I don't hear any of the calls. Renee listens to them. We got a couple people called in. One person wrote. So if you're ready, we'll roll the first call.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, let's do it.
Hello, my name's AJ. I'm a comedian. Although I live in the middle of nowhere, I really made the whole Zoom comedy thing work for me. And I guess you can kind of say the same thing about my friend who's also a comedian who lives in the same middle of nowhere town. But my friend wants to do a trip to New York City for comedy, which I think is great, except I don't think he's ready to go to New York City. I don't even think he has 5 minutes of material yet. And he hasn't really been booked on the shows that are around here. And I feel like I really should have talked him out of New York City earlier. But now now we're like 2 weeks from going, and I don't know what to say. I don't want to just watch him embarrass himself in New York City. What can I say to my friend to make him reconsider this trip to New York City without me sounding like a big jerk and without me backpedaling on what I've already said? Because I didn't realize he had such high expectations of New York City. I thought he just wanted to see his Zoom comedy friends. Thank you.
Okay. So I'll let you take first crack. I think I know what I'm going to say, but you go ahead.
Yeah.
Especially because you are a New Yorker. So
Yeah, I would say I don't think you need to talk him out of anything. I don't think you did anything wrong. I think that every experience is worth having. So, even if he comes here and then realizes he doesn't quite have the time or realizes he can't get up on the shows that he wants to get on, I think that New York as an entity and as a place that it sounds like you're coming together. I think it would do both of you well to go see shows at the Cellar, to go hang out at the Stand, to be around New York Comedy Club, and to also go to Brooklyn and see what those alt and indie shows are like. And I think that make the time that you're here, especially to say that you are sort of starved for places to get up and things to do, being in that quote unquote middle of nowhere. I think you can make New York your own masterclass for as long as you want to, and you can do that with trips all across the country. Chicago is great. LA, as long as you're able to I would say bring a car if you're gonna go to LA. Like, you can't just go to one show per night in LA. Try to make it to a couple of them. But at New York especially, it's so easy to get around, and there's a ridiculous amount of places to get up that I think that really making the most of it, taking the advantage of it. I don't think you've said anything wrong to your friend. I would just say to temper his expectations in a way. Remind him, and I don't know if you've been to New York or not, but remind him that New York this is a bad place. Like, I think that sometimes people, because it's like big and beautiful and iconic, people think of it with all of these things that are in the movie. But you have to remember that the movie took out all the other parts. So like, even in my act, I've started talking about how like it it feels like society, as civilization as we know it, is winding down, because I saw a slow rat and I'm like, that's it.
yeah,
That's a slow rat. I saw a rat that wanted to run and was just out of breath. And it's like, not, and people say that only in New York thing, but it's like, it's true. It's like, there are nasty things that happen here, and there are genuinely harrowing things that happen here that only happen when you pack this many people on top of each other. So it's not as if New York is a special place in that way. Like, LA could become New York if you brought enough people there.
yeah, and you smushed them all together.
Mushed them, because there's plenty of people in LA. But I think that that's the best thing you can do. Don't beat yourself up. You haven't done anything wrong. And if you want to temper some of those expectations, remind your friend where they're going. They're going to a place where people that are very, very funny, like funny in a way that is like you could feast on it. They quit here. Like, it's like there's nothing reassuring about this city.
No, yeah, it is the dream crusher. I mean, there's no well, let me spare your feelings here kind of thing. You know what I mean? It just kind of doesn't exist in New York, and that's why it's such a great testing ground. Where I'll still go to New York and have like, I had a good set. It was decent. Because it's the NFL of stand-up. It's like, you see the best of the best every night. Every night you go somewhere and you see someone and be like, that was brilliant, or I can't believe how hard that person crushed. And one thing I learned about New York is I don't bring material like, oh, this is my best material. I just gotta feel what's right in the moment, because that's what New York is. It's definitely spur of the moment, and it's like, yeah. So I mean, I really don't have anything to add. I think you nailed it in terms of, it's just really don't overthink it, and don't expect too much, and be careful.
Yeah, because I think you would be making a mistake to not come, to get you and your friend to cancel. That I think would be too much. I think still come, because like, to what Matt is saying, the level of shows you're going to see, and I'm not even saying this as someone who's like, oh, we're just better because I live here or something. I'm saying like, there are people that I watch when I go to shows that I'm like, oh man, maybe one day.
Yeah, always. Always. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy, but it's like, don't let, not to sound mystic, but like, don't let that scare you, let that free you,
Yeah. Because don't get me wrong, when you come, the thing that I love about New York is that it's the whole spectrum. The worst comics I've ever seen in my life are here. and the best ones I've ever seen in my life are here.
It's everybody. It's like wealth. The richest
Yeah,
and the poorest live in New York
yeah,
next to
like
each other.
yeah. Uh-oh.
Hmm.
Let me see. Let me
Yeah.
grab this.
Okay. So hope that helped, AJ. And yeah, don't you sound way more way too freaked out. You shouldn't be so freaked out. It's just a trip. Um, okay, let's roll next call.
Hey Matt, my name is Shane. I'm a huge fan of your stand-up ever since I discovered Shovel Fighter.
Thanks.
I wanted to ask you, as I'm 26 and I've mostly just lived with my mom for this portion of my life so far. Lived with an ex for a few years, did a little time in city jail, and now I'm back with my mom. And I guess my question for you is, as a comedian who's done a lot of touring, what would you say would be a good spot other than Nashville for musicians? I'm a musician. I've been to Nashville and LA a couple times for, band related trips, and my band is sort of kind of defunct or on hiatus, whatever you want to call it right now. And, I'm trying to relocate and start over. And, of course I have my mom telling me the grass isn't always greener and all that good stuff, but I hate it where I live, and I'm pretty sure I pissed off a lot of the people who live here with me. So that, they hate me too. And the grass may not always be greener, but I'm pretty sure it's better somewhere else if you killed all the fucking grass on your side, right? I don't know. If you're wondering if I'm in therapy, you guessed correctly. I know you're not my therapist.
Good.
But, yeah, and any advice that you would have for a musician. I love Nashville, and I even love LA, but LA sounds kind of fucked up right now, so. And I don't really want to move to Austin, I don't think, but maybe you can change my mind. Thanks, man. Bye.
Hey, dude. Thanks for the kind words. Thanks for calling in. Sounds like you're feeling rough. Let me just say this right off the bat. I mean, you're 26. That's so young. Like, not that makes you more or excuse me, less responsible for any of your mistakes or things like that. But it's like what it does give you is time. You've got a lot of time. Definitely, move if you want to move, and if that helps you, it helps your mental health, and you've got enough money to get by, or you have a job in place, or you think you can. Great. I'm always going to say take the risk. Just take the risk. As long as it's calculated and all that jazz, and if it makes you happier. It sounds like you're miserable. So if you're miserable living with your mother, move out. But as far as where to move as a musician, dude, I couldn't really even tell you where to move as a comedian, and I've been doing that for 20 years. I mean, it's kind of, I think you just kind of get online and do research and find out the kind of ecosystem you want to be a part of, and then go to that one. I think Nashville is, you want to get out of there, but I would say that'd be good. But Austin, Chicago, I mean, I think err on the side of big city and start from there, knowing you can always move. So that would be my advice. I just don't know anything about the music game at all. So what would you add, Josh?
So I think that everything that you're saying right now is pretty spot on about, I feel the same way, but I think that the one thing, and maybe I missed it in the call. Okay, I'm worried about any advice to give on where to move because I'm not sure what city he's in. So then I might say the city that he's in now, and then he's like, oh geez, well then.
If I'm not mistaken, I think he is in Nashville right now. I think.
Oh, okay. Because I thought he was thinking of moving to Nashville or LA, but maybe he's in Nashville.
And I think that's why he said anywhere to move besides Nashville.
Oh,
and then later
I
on,
see.
he was like,
Okay.
he was like, look, Nashville's great, but I think, yeah.
I did indeed mishear him then.
But I could have misheard him too. But let's just go from that assumption.
I will say, I think that you're absolutely right, Matt, in being like err on the side of big cities and err on the side of music cities, because just like with comedy, no matter where you tell a comic to move, you're telling them to move somewhere there's other comedy they can watch.
Yeah.
So most of what being an artist is being in conference with other artists. So you
Correct.
don't want to move somewhere just because it's cheap and then there's not as much art there and then you don't grow, you know? So I know that when I was in Chicago, I knew lots of cool places to go to listen to music, like live music and stuff like that. But I also know that but with the internet, where you live matters so much less because you
Yes.
can send out things. You know, you can upload to Spotify yourself through DistroKid. You can collaborate with people with sending them stems and stuff. So it becomes less a matter of where you move for your career and more a matter of where you move for your mental health and everything. And so I think that if you really love music and you're looking to make changes and you're looking for a fresh start, that's a very fair assessment on how to do it, because moving is like one of the reasons it sucks is the same reason it's awesome. It's like you're chucking out all of your lived experience so far. You're chucking out all of your familiarity with your surroundings. I think that moving, like Matt was saying, doing a little bit of research and seeing what, especially for your genre, because one of the things that I think sometimes people, okay, I'm just trying to think of the best way to word this. So the same way that when you are trying to make money, right? You look for a weakness in the market and you look for something that the market is not offering, and then you create a service out of that, and then everybody comes to you because you're the only one that has it.
Right.
Whereas when you're making art, you actually want to be where the saturation is, because with the saturation, that is how you get in conference with other artists and you learn from them, you collaborate with them, you come to like an understanding of how to do things you never would have known how to do before. So I would say, I think Memphis is great. I think it's really cool. I don't know the genre of music you're doing, but I would say look up which cities have the best music of your genre that you're into and like the best community. But I love Memphis, especially if you're trying to err on the side of cheaper, because then New York and LA won't necessarily be your friend.
No, I mean, I wouldn't even say Chicago either. I mean,
Yeah, it's like Chicago barely, man. Like Chicago is, because I was coming from the South as well. Like when I moved to Chicago, I moved to Chicago from Louisiana. So even though Chicago is on the cheaper side of those big cities, it's
Yeah.
still not cheap.
No, and it like most places, it got carved up that you can't even. I mean, I was in Bozeman, Montana, and like it's blown out. No locals can afford houses, and most of them are like can't afford rent anymore. And it's just like, we live it. It's the era we live in, and I hope that gets rolled back. They need to break up some of these companies, but like, yeah, it's you're up against it. So I think, yeah, what you said in terms of finding, and you made a really good point that made me think about. You not only want to be in a community, but you want to be fed your art. So you kind of want to be seeing people that are doing it on far higher levels than you, and getting that ebb and flow and kind of going like, and also just like you and I see a lot of comedy or around a lot of comedy, and it helps us not write the same joke as somebody else and have the same style as somebody else. And I'm sure that's important as a musician. If you got this whole persona or whatever, this songwriting style, singing style, and you go and there's someone that's better looking and they do it better, and they're and you're like, man, why have I been practicing like this all this time? This guy's been doing it and he's like the wonder kid, and I'm
Yeah. And so, maybe I missed this as well, but did he say what his like instrument or genre was?
Nothing.
Okay, because I think that it's also a thing of like, the good thing about moving to where there's saturation is if you're trying to be in a new band, let's say you do drums or you play guitar and you're looking for another band or another sense of community to jam with in that way, you're going to find that in bigger places, So
Right.
find those tertiary markets. Like, I wouldn't necessarily suggest Atlanta, because Atlanta is way more like hip hop oriented. If
Sure.
you're not doing that type of music, you might
Right.
feel a little lost in that mix. There's jazz there, but like Atlanta is known for like hip hop and stuff.
Yes.
But I think Memphis has a good mix of everything.
I think that's a great idea, and it's also, you can probably afford to live there relatively inexpensively, and that's when you're an artist, that's half the battle. I mean, you can't be spending all your time on a job that will lead to be a career. Really, you just have to have something that covers rent and food. So hope that helps, man. And you sound really effed up, and you shouldn't be. You've got a lot of time, and I think you just need a swift kick in the head from the mystical perception foot, because I think it's just you have to shift focus, because it sounds like you're focusing on your miserableness, and I understand it's hard not to, but you got to turn away from that a little bit. So
also 26 is like, you can't even appreciate how good your back is.
Yeah, you're like looking for problems. You don't understand what's gonna come. You know what I mean? When you get in your 40s and a couple of your friends have died, like then you're like, okay, you understand what true sadness is.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong. It's like, look, if you've been to jail and you've like had your back and forths with bandmates and like people around you that you live there, I understand how it can feel trapping.
Yes.
Like truly, like yes. Oh man, I don't know a way out of this thing. But there is the upside of time, because if you were 52 and had all those problems, it would be so much worse, because you'd have less to look forward to.
Yes.
There's still time for you to turn all this around,
absolutely.
And I hope that you both like find that and feel that there's so much opportunity left,
Absolutely. And it's hard to get perspective, and I'm not discounting your pain at all. I know you've been through it, but just understand you shouldn't be kicking your own ass, because life will do that anyway. Life will kick your ass. Don't kick your own. Hope that helps. We got one more. Basically, I put a thing online to ask, anything, one question, and we got the stock question, but we covered this a little bit esoterically, but just for the last one, how do you come up with material? So I feel like we all kind of do that. We all get asked that about as much as how'd you get started. I've never really asked how'd you get started. It's never fun, but like, how do you come up with your material?
Yeah. Well, give me 1 second. I'm gonna put this. The light fell, so I'm gonna
do your thing. Yeah.
All right. So basically, I have the like hot streaks and the low periods of feeling creative, and I think that working at Daily Show, working at Tonight Show have helped, because it taught me how to write when I don't feel like it. So then I don't have to wait for inspiration or anything. But I think the way that I write is that I try to write through what I take away from conversations, like the dad thing. It's like that genuinely is just a conversation that I had with my friend after all the things he was saying about how his kids have been doing.
Yeah.
And then we started like chopping it up about that, because I was like, you're like a good dad and a good dude, and that's rare. like because then you have good dudes that are bad dads when they don't even mean to be bad dads. They're just like, oh, I didn't know it was important to go to the soccer game. They're all 5. They're not good. Why would I go? Like, there's no championship. Like, I would go if he was like at FIFA, like if he was, you know what I mean, the World Cup, I'd go. But they're 5. Why would I go?
This is his time.
Yeah. And then you have like good dads that are bad dudes.
Yes.
Where it's like they love their kids so much and they want to be in their life, but they can't seem to like stay out of trouble, or they can't seem to, like those people also exist, where it's like, guys, the only way that I know to make money is to do something terrible. So I
mean, there's mob bosses that are great fathers.
Yeah, the kid doesn't even know. The kid's like, I don't know. I thought my dad was an accountant. Turns out he's been cracking eggs in New Jersey for years.
I feel like people generally treat their family as their own. It's like that's their charity, where they will run over someone on the street. They don't care. Everyone else can go to hell as long as my kids are happy. It's just kind of like this. It's a weird psychosis. It's insane.
Yeah, and so I think that's basically how I do. It's like I write through what I take away from conversation, from what I take away from experience, and from what I take away from like any random thoughts that I have. So Okay, like a good example is a conversation that I had with my friends at a show. So I was at a show. I was up next, and I noticed that the comic before me talked about how her parents had been married for 40 years, and everybody
Mm,
clapped. And I was like, why do people do that? Why do people
yeah,
clap when we tell them how long people have been together? Because you
yeah.
can't honestly tell me that those were 40 good years. Those were
No.
14 good years with some other years in between, you know? And
Yeah.
I feel like it's weird that we clap just out of like, we weirdly enough, we clap for like war vets and married people.
Yep.
And the only difference between married people and war vets is that married people are at war with each other, you know? So
Yes.
then
Right.
we go ahead, we're like, wow, y'all been fighting for 15 years bravely. Give it
Yeah.
up for them. You know
You
what I
toughed
mean?
it out. You're in the trenches. Yeah.
I'm surprised married people don't get to board early. Like that's the same way that we let war vets like, hey,
Oh
just
yeah, for
come
sure.
on.
It's like if you've been, if you like, they'd be like, anyone needs special assistance. Okay, now anyone who's been married longer than 20 years,
Yeah, we would love for you to be able to
boarding,
board at this time.
or at this time. Uh,
And I think that those things, like having that conversation with them, like I didn't try it on stage right after that or anything, but just the thought got going in my head of like, why is that? And then I went to
yeah.
the place of like, well, you know what's crazy is I think that those could be 40 good years if we broke them up. So actually what should happen,
Yeah.
whether you're happily married or not, we should break you up every 5 years. There should be term limits on marriage because then you want to get back with the person.
Yes.
Then you're walking
Uh-huh.
down the street and you run into your wife and you're like, I can't wait to get her back. Oh yeah, that's gonna be a
Yeah.
good day. You
How
know what I
long do
mean?
we have?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then
We have to be another 6 months left of this year that we've been court ordered to be apart to keep our marriage fresh. Man, I miss
yeah.
you. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I miss you a lot because then you get to see like people always when they're in it, when they're deep in it, they think like their life be somehow different and they actually get out there. But sadly, it's like you usually need a divorce or a bad breakup where you're not gonna get back
Yeah.
together to see. But it would be beautiful to show people it's like, oh no, it's what it's like out here.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
now you get to go back. That'd be beautiful. And then you could even have like with the term limits, you could also have campaign promises in between. So it's like,
Uh-huh.
listen, if you renew with me, all right, look, I know before it wasn't going well. Okay. I know that before I was
I
kind of
have
messing around
reflected.
and everything.
I have done soul searching. I and
Please
now
look, we are bringing jobs back to this house.
and
Okay.
there will be benefits and there will be a sharing of chores. Do you understand?
Yeah.
And I will pick up after myself. I've been doing that on my own. Yeah.
Just reelect me. All right. I need
Please.
this.
Please, I need this.
Yeah, so
But
that overall, like those things go into process of just trying to be present, trying to write through experience, and then the second half of it for every comedian, I think, is just like writing the rest of it on stage. So you
yes.
never want to. Some people say that they write on stage only in a way that I'm like,
Nah.
I don't know about that because
No.
that seems a little lazy. I think
Hmm.
that you write the first half in your head, whether you write it down or not doesn't matter. But you
Yeah.
write the first half in your head, and then the second half is through performance and through repetition. You figure
Yes.
out what the joke is. You know?
Yes. I think one of the most damaging things for young comedians was ever seeing like Dave Chappelle live, just in a regular.
Yeah.
Because Dave started at 18 and never thought comedians had material. He never wrote any, but he's a savant. Like he's just got that gift that he can go
Yeah.
on stage and be like, I'm just gonna talk about my day and find a way to crush effortlessly, So the amount of comics I saw, especially like the UCB in LA, I'd see comics that would just get on stage and be like, I'm just gonna talk and it would be, wouldn't that be crazy? That'd be crazy. Anyway, nothing. You didn't have anything. You had a
Yeah.
thing that if you're talking to my friends, they would be like, "Oh, it's fascinating." I mean, there's a girl who was evidently she was in like a heavy metal video, and she just kept saying like, I can't believe I was in the heavy metal video, you guys. Like,
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
What about it? How did it make you feel? You got to write something about what was real about it. You can't just say something different, and it
Yeah.
just, so. Yeah, I mean it's the whole like I definitely write on stage, but you're right. I gotta have a route. I gotta have an idea that
Yeah,
I'm
just
developing.
something. Yeah,
Hmm.
it's not about I think some people go too far either way. There are some people who are like, in order for me to have written, I have to sit down for an hour, write in a notebook, and make sure it's like, at least 12 of the jokes are gold or I can't get up from the desk, whatever those
Right,
things are.
right.
But then there's also people, like you said, who are just like, I'm just going to talk and see what happens. And it's like both of those things are too rigidly
No.
like expecting of something.
Yes, and you're not that person. Like
Yeah.
that person is exceedingly. It's almost like, like you can be in the army, but there's a guy that can, shoot a quarter from 200 yards in high wind or something. Like that's not
Yeah.
every. That's not. It's like you guys are on the same team, but I mean, you don't expect to get up in the crow's nest and make that shot because you're wearing a green
Yeah.
uniform.
Because it also took that other person 20 years of doing that thing to get to
Again
that
and
place.
again and
Because
again and again.
I'm sure like I've watched young Chappelle stuff and I'm
Mhm.
like, oh, this is a very calculated joke.
Yes.
Like those
Yes.
Def Jam years were very like
Yes.
specific. You can tell he wrote this joke.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's years later that he gets into this like, I think I'm just gonna stay up here past my hour 15 of material and then
Right.
play. And
Mm-hmm.
then now it's like, well, I'm just gonna play the whole time because I'm
Yeah.
that good.
It's like you don't start booking acting roles until you don't need them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
just show up and you're like, "What's the line?" Great. All right, guys, peace. And they're like, "I like his style. He's
Mhm.
relaxed." Everyone else is like, "Should I leave the door open?" And you guys, "Okay, thanks, guys. Thanks so much. Thank you." Like you're
Yeah.
never forgetting it. Once Chappelle stopped caring, like stopped or not caring but worrying,
Mhm.
about look, you might laugh, you might not. I'm just gonna try this.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna smoke my cigarette, sit on this stool. Like it is funny. The difference between young and old Chappelle is just night and day. It's
Yeah.
crazy. It's crazy.
Have you ever heard the conspiracy theory
What's that?
that the new one isn't him?
What, like he went to Africa and someone else came back, or
Yeah. That's a real conspiracy that because they're
Oh.
like, no, because how'd he get that ripped? And it's like working out.
working
That,
out,
that's how that happened.
free time and liquidity. The guy has more money than God. Like I mean,
So it's just a funny, I don't know. Like I love little super because those
Oh,
conspiracy
oh.
theories I love because they're so obscure that nobody knows them.
yes.
So when you tell people, they're like, "What?"
I had a hairdresser at when I was on Mad TV that would tell me the wildest, like, "Oh, you didn't know so and so's gay? Yeah, they live with so and so." And you're like, "Stop it! What? They're married to women and they have kids? Psh, nah, that's all for show, honey." And you're like, "Wait," but you'd go, "I could see it."
Yeah.
They would always say someone that you're like, "Oh my, you just blew my mind." And
Yeah.
I was that guy. I'd be like, are you fucking like seriously?" And he'd be like, "Yeah," and they were dead serious. And to this day, I wonder. I'm not going to be that
Yeah.
person who's like, running around asking people that know them or something. But I don't. I'm with you. It's like that stuff is fascinating. That it's
Because
just
it's like
what if it is?
it's like it, and some of them don't make any sense at all. But you're like,
Right.
it makes a thread enough of sense that I can see how people repeat it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's insane. I won't even say what the some of the people, because I don't. It's like
Yeah.
look, if they are in the closet that bad and they feel the need to hide, okay, that's not. It's
Yeah,
not for me
yeah.
to be like share it on this podcast. And sorry for listeners flipping out right now, but
I
it is-
also feel like you could and should write from conspiracy theories because it's like what's wild about conspiracies is that it's exactly how you write jokes. We all saw the same thing and you
Yep.
came to a different conclusion.
totally.
And so
Absolutely.
it's like I feel like writing from conspiracy. What if that's a new dude? What
What if?
what that would be wild if that's a new dude. Oh my god. That
he
new
didn't
dude is
used to smoke
very
cigarettes all the time.
yeah, it's like that new dude is very big.
Very big. Yeah, he dresses much more stylishly.
Yeah. Did he
Yeah.
kill the old Chappelle himself? Because he looks like he could.
Right. Or is the old Chappelle giving him jokes and paying him? What is...
Yeah, yeah. I don't
He
want
just
to
doesn't
come
want
back.
the limelight anymore. He's with his family. Who
You're
knows?
big and bald. Go ahead and
Yeah.
go to my place.
Mhm. Just sign this NDA. Okay, great. We're in business. Yeah. Well, Josh, this was fantastic, man. I can't believe how much time we did, and it didn't feel like it was going by slow at all. That was great. I feel like I got to know you better, which is my favorite thing about doing this show with someone I know but I don't know that well. So I appreciate you taking the time. Is there anything you'd like to plug before you go?
Yeah. So if you go to basically anywhere that you listen to comedy, Spotify, Pandora, Apple Music, everything, I have my latest album from my special hashtag that you can find. And then I also have my mixtape that I put together during the pandemic called Elusive. That's everywhere that you listen to music. And then I Like You is my first album, and that is also everywhere that you listen to comedy. So I'm just excited for those people to check out those things. Hashtag just came out a couple weeks ago. So I'm just excited for people to listen.
That's awesome, man. Congratulations. Thanks again for coming on. This was awesome.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Man, we went deep. That was great. If you need any advice and you want to be a part of the show, leave a message anonymously at 323-763-0228. Again, that's 323-763-0228. Thanks. This Might Help with Matt Braunger was created and hosted by me, Matt Braunger. Produced by Outer Circle Media. Executive producers Matt Kleinschmidt and Robert Kelly for the Laugh Button Podcasts.